fantasy short stories. Of Monsters and Mushrooms by Lesley Herron. Chapter 7, Parasitic Zombie Spores. Eric lifted a hand, tentatively hoping to grab the attention of their host. I'm sorry, but can we get back to—
Wait for it?
The stocky crocodile man shot out a stubby limb and pushed a clawed finger in Eric's direction, effectively hushing him. He pursed his lips, grumbling under his breath. Their situation, after being tasked with a weighty goal by an underground kingpin tyrant ghost lady, hadn't improved. Flung over the shoulders of several guards, their little traveling party had been hauled away, only to be tossed through a bank vault-sized door onto a disused subway platform, and the resounding clunk of it slamming shut left him with more questions than answers. Not to mention the roll of papers he clutched in his hand. Eric looked down at the navy blue scroll sealed with a wax-stamped skull.
Give this to the creature stationed in the tunnels, and he'll guide you right.
Madam Whisper's words replayed over and over in his head. He shifted his attention back to their reptilian host, currently the only other living soul down in the dank, abandoned subway tunnels. Please, if you could—
Almost there.
The tense silence that followed verged on maddening, enough that Eric wanted to rip his hair out with a feral scream. Instead, he tamped it down and scanned his surroundings for anything to take his mind off the swirling hurricane of questions. Things like, where are we? Why are we here? Where's my brother? And most importantly, are you a crocodile or an alligator? Being somewhat landlocked his whole life, he'd never bothered to learn the difference, and not knowing needled at him. The abandoned subway platform clearly suffered from years and years of neglect. The tile walls stained a myriad of shades of yellows and browns. Piles of garbage had been collected into a maze of smelly trash and broken junk. One of the overhead fluorescent bulbs flickered rapidly.
Ripper! We have a winner!
Jolting and nearly spilling into the smelliest of the trash piles, Eric regained his balance in time to watch the crocodile man scuttle close to a wall where neon blue painter's tape stretched floor to ceiling at one end.
Blobros has it by a hair?
The crocodile man leaned in closer, snorting out a puff of air from his snout and removing a short strand of something black from the goop.
Literally.
He turned to face the platform, grinning at nothing.
That means Tiffany wins this round. Pay up, ladies.
Eric frowned as, from his perspective, only a thin strand of golden yellow slime mold had crossed the impromptu finish line. As far as he could tell, the other two slimes hadn't even been informed there was a game, still sitting back at the starting line only 6 inches away. His frown only deepened as the reptile moved from pile to pile, grabbing random bits of junk. He then sidled up to a floral stained glass lamp that had been balanced atop 3 broken microwaves. He threw an arm around the body of the woman and hugged her tight, dumping the treasures at her feet.
You're winning, small lady.
The crocodile then leaned in close, pressing the end of his snout against one of the panes of the lampshade.
I know you cheated. Cut me in, or I tell the others.
Having lost interest in scouring the junk for anything useful, Evan turned in time to see the reptile bark out a slightly manic laugh, and he shot a curious glance up at Brig. What's happening right now? Clearing his throat, the merc knelt down next to the boy, pointing at the scene with a meaty finger.
Well, I think that lamp there just got caught fixing the race, probably by sneaking this Blob Ross character some oats, or doping. So maybe—
No way. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Evan rolled his eyes, cutting off the big man with a warning look. He glanced over at the gangly idiot next to him. What are your thoughts?
It's clearly obvious.
Attila stood in front of a polished chrome bumper the reptile had hung in the place of a mirror. His hand rummaged through a box labeled Disguises that was nothing more than an odd assortment of headwear. He couldn't decide between a fancy beaded flapper cap with stunning ostrich feathers or his own handsome gambler's hat. This guy's been down in the dark with sewer fumes and garbage for too long. Wait a tick. The reptile turned slowly, taking them in as if seeing them for the first time. Why are you all standing around? And where's your complimentary gift bags? He shot a deflated soccer ball an admonishing look. Did Wilma not give you boys the meet and greet while you waited? Evan perked up. Gift bags? Sorry about that, lads. It's just when you get 3 days deep into a game, you gotta finish it.
You were watching slime molds race.
Eric's attention shifted between the multicolored blobs and their host.
For 3 days?
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds boring and dumb. The crocodile put his hands on his hips. Eric lifted a finger, ready to make an argument, when he bit his tongue and let out a frustrated sigh.
Never mind. I have more important things I need to know.
He lifted the hand still holding the navy blue scroll.
Like anything. Anything useful at this point would be amazing.
I want to know why you're talking to trash piles. Evan stared up at half a mannequin, split head to toe, that leaned precariously against the gas canister-turned water cooler, wearing a ratty lavender muumuu and a sticker on the chest that read, "Hello, my name is Lizzie." The crocodile man gasped, shoving his hands over the left and right side of the elegant floral-stained glass lamp. Don't say such things around my Sheilas. They're not trashy, just a little rough around the edges. He stroked the lampshade lovingly, cooing at it. Attila decided to stick with what he knew and placed his beloved gambler's hat back on his head. He ran his fingers along the brim and flashed the chrome mirror a winning smile before turning to the nearest trash pile. And what about this gorgeous gal? He threw an arm around the broken lava lamp with a glued-on angelic Christmas tree topper. Is she free tonight? His toothy grin never wavered. That is, until the reptile lunged for him, bearing his own toothy grin. Fangs were bared and claws extended, both aimed at his jugular. Oh my God! Attila jumped back on instinct, letting out a totally manly scream as he toppled into Brig. The two of them spun out of control and crashed into a stack of moldy, wet cardboard boxes. Snorting out a puff of air from his nostrils, the crocodile turned his back on the floundering pair and gently straightened the silver pipe cleaner halo atop the Christmas topper's head. Nobody, and I mean nobody, touches Angie. She's my best chick. Eric rubbed his hand across his forehead with his own petulant whine.
Please, 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 can we focus here?
He approached, offering the scroll out once more. He spoke with the tone of an exhausted mother dealing with a rambunctious child.
I was told to give this to you when we arrived. Will you take a moment from your game and open it?
He waved the roll of papers with too much insistence. The crocodile man turned, his flare of anger immediately forgotten, and stretched out a hand to take the scroll, when the noise of the heavy turnwheel cranking cracked through the silence. Levers and locking bolts shifted out of place against the steel barrier, and the giant hinges groaned in protest as the vault door opened just enough for another body to be violently shoved through. Vel resisted the shove, fighting against the meaty arm that held him in place.
What the hell are you doing?
He swung his fists wildly in protest, attempting to connect a punch in hopes they'd throw him back in his cell the same as Frankie had done. But his knuckles barely reached past the behemoth's elbow, nowhere close to anything that would inflict enough pain to warrant rearrest.
What am I doing?
The brick wall of a man flexed his arm, pushing hard against the prisoner's chest, and sent him skidding further inside.
Take your freedom, freak, and be happy it's not the chopping block.
Vel lurched forward, a hiss of insult snaking across his tongue, when a pile of lumpy fabric flew through the opening and straight into his face, wrapping around his head. They knocked him off balance, and he crashed to the hard, concrete platform with a thud. As the vault door began to seal, the locking pins sliding back into place, each one rang out like the hammering of nails in his coffin. He stared up into the folds of fabric with an angry sigh.
Stupid, stupid, stupid.
He clacked the back of his skull against the floor with each repetition.
It looks like you're trying to break the floor with your head. Would you like me to remind you how concrete works?
Tin Man! Evan's tiny face appeared in Vel's vision as he pulled away the fabric, and he groaned, clenching his eyes shut until he could gather the wherewithal to sit up. When he did, his pile of things landed in his lap, and he looked down. The guards had used his long red duster as a knapsack to hold his other pre-incarceration belongings, like his wallet, brass knuckles, a near-empty bottle of cheap booze, that half-eaten candy bar he'd been enjoying only moments before his arrest, and...
Hey, where's my toothbrush?
He shot a rude gesture at the closed door, then groaned, dragging his mechanical hand down over his face.
It's fine. It's fine. I can just get another one later.
He sorted his meager belongings into the pockets of his jacket and shoved his arms through the sleeves as he climbed to his feet. After popping the collar to hide most of the scars and metal plates running down the back of his neck, he turned to take in his surroundings, which were nothing special to gawk at. A dimly lit train platform for one of the abandoned subway lines, trash in various piles, a crocodile wearing a stained mechanic's jumpsuit, and... His face fell into a glower as his eyes landed on his brother.
You did this, didn't you?
Eric scoffed in disbelief.
I wasn't just going to leave you in that jail cell. I was happy there. I didn't ask you to do me any favors.
Without thinking, Vel's mechanical hand snapped out and snatched a nearby lamp, flinging it across the room like a Molotov cocktail. It shattered against the wall several feet away from his brother's face, pieces of the lampshade embedding itself into the tile and decorating the slime molds with countless slivers of multicolored glass.
Tiffany? No!
Vel sidestepped the stranger that rushed past him, reaching out with his right hand and curling mechanical fingers around the lapel of Eric's overshirt. His jaw clamped impossibly tight as he lifted his brother a few inches into the air, ready to fling him into the pile of beautiful shrapnel, when he managed to stop himself.
Just breathe,
he told himself, sucking air in through his nose and exhaling through his mouth. He released his brother, dropping him back to his feet. His idiotic sibling didn't know any better. He was too smart to know how stupid his actions were. Breathe in and out. Being mad at Eric was like being mad at the cat who crapped on your favorite jacket. A pointless reaction because it's just what they do. They crap on everything you love, strand you in a different reality, turn you into a mechanical freak, and BAM! Vel continued his mantra, forcing himself to remain calm as he opened his eyes to see his metal fist buried into several inches of tile and concrete, the exploded remains of an orange slime mold covering the tarnished metal of his arm. He allowed the pain of the act to wash over him, tracing the resonating agony through the synthetic nerves and tissue until he pulled his hand from the divot with a small hiss.
Fine.
Vel shook his arm, sloughing off the gunk. He couldn't see any other way out of this predicament, and, well, the sooner he helped them navigate whatever trouble they were in, the sooner he'd be free.
I promised Mom I would keep you safe.
He narrowed his eyes at his brother.
And I'd like to keep one of the promises I made that night.
He spun, rotating his mechanical shoulder to work out the dull ache from his temper tantrum. Then he pulled out the last remnants of the cheap booze and downed the bitter swill in a single gulp. He let out a low, satisfied hiss and tossed the bottle on top of the nearest trash heap, looking around.
So, What are we doing here?
I don't know, just
Breaking people's best mates!
The crocodile man that had rushed forward spun on him, holding up handfuls of broken shards.
Tiffany's been here the longest.
Vel winced at the sorrow laced through that thick Aussie accent, and something forgotten tugged at his gut. He stooped to help, shrinking with regret and ignoring his brother entirely. He plucked up the largest of the remaining shards with a grimace.
Sorry.
The reptile gave one final typhoon of a sniffle before offloading the broken glass into the newcomer's outstretched hand and stood.
No worries, mate. She had it coming after that sneaky bit of drama she pulled with Rossi boy over there.
He brushed his palms against his greasy jumpsuit and offered a toothy grin to them.
Between you and me, she wasn't the brightest. It was just a matter of time before one of the others sent her to the scrap heap, if you get my meaning.
Frowning, Vel shook his head.
Not really.
Brig, having finally extricated himself from the sopping cardboard boxes, and overcoming his fear of sewer gators after watching one have an emotional breakdown over a gaudy lamp, replaced his top hat on his head and snapped his suspenders back into place.
So, how long have you been down here? Alone?
What day is it?
Wednesday. Evan gestured to the watch on his wrist. After a moment of mental calculations, the crocodile came back with a snap of his maw, a pointed gesture, and the words,
8 years?
Finally giving in to his frustrations, Eric let out a high-pitched shriek and stomped forward, all but shoving that navy blue scroll into the reptile's chest.
What are we doing here?
Crikey, no need to get pushy.
The crocodile broke the wax seal on the rolls of parchment and unfurled them, quickly scanning through the madam's hastily scrawled, albeit sloppy, handwriting. He let out a sniff as he folded up the scroll and tucked it into the inside pocket of his jumper.
Let's start over, shall we? My name is Bruce, and welcome to Mining Platform M4D. I've been instructed to lead you to the infestation.
The what?
Brig didn't appreciate those words none, especially not when Bruce wiggled his stubby little fingers in a way that implied bugs.
I don't know how you managed to tick off the madam, so bad you landed yourselves here.
The reptile swiveled on his heel.
But remember when those worms redecorated Pale Point a while back?
He moved towards his beloved Angie, pausing to pat her on the head, then reached into the box behind her and pulled out a go bag, a torch, and his beautiful shotgun, Eugenia. When he turned back to face the newcomers, he grinned at the same uneasy expression written across all their faces.
Well, they've all decided to go on a walkabout lately, and the madam is sending us in as...
Bruce tossed the gun in the air, catching the fore end and pumping around into the chamber with theatrical flair.
Exterminators!
Vel shoved his face into his hands, groaning,
I'm too sober for this.
30 minutes had passed since the 5 of them had accompanied the crocodile, hopping off the platform to follow the rusty, disused train tracks into the low, flickering light of the underground abyss. 30 minutes that had gone by in glorious, if slightly uncomfortable, silence, broken only when his dumb brother noticed the dozens of small boxes attached to the grimy tunnel walls every 100 feet. Vel groaned when Eric nearly squealed in delight as he pulled one free. Then someone, not naming any names, was stupid enough to ask him what they did.
Well, these are third-generation frequency emitters with quad-phase modulation. They create a 72.4 kilohertz ultrasonic perimeter field, attenuating at roughly a 25-meter depth and inducing acute sensory overload, thus inhibiting approach via neurophysiological interference.
Eric brandished the lunchbox-sized device for emphasis, his excitement only dimming once he noticed the looks of confusion he was getting in return.
Oh, did you understand anything the good doctor just said about those thingies?
Brig leaned in close to his buddy, who knew more about gadgets than a gizmologist. Attila shrugged. Not a word.
Then why'd you ask?
Wailing, Eric pinched the bridge of his nose before he held up the box.
They put these thingies on the tunnel walls because they make a noise that drives the worms away.
He flipped over the emitter and clicked a button. A momentary high-pitched whine erupted through the silence, humming angrily until the tone reached its peak just outside of human hearing and stabilized.
Huh, I thought it might be broken.
Bruce dug a claw between his dagger teeth with bored disinterest.
I could have told you that.
Rubbing a meaty finger over his own teeth, attempting to scrub away the odd pain the tone caused, Briggs' attention flickered to the walls around them, pocked with destruction, bite marks, and various sized holes presumably left by the worms, and then to the device in the doc's hands.
Well, judging by the interior decoration, maybe they are broken.
Reaching over, Bruce flipped the little switch on the noise box to off.
Nah, they worked a treat, until they didn't. Now they just drive those wormy pricks into full feral mode.
Eric frowned. Either the worms had evolved to resist the tone, doubtful, or something was interfering with the tone. Intermodulation distortion. Just more evidence for a theory he had devised a while back, if the timing lined up. Do you mind if I keep this? You never know when it might come in handy.
Knock yourself out.
Bruce clapped him on the shoulder.
Just don't turn it on unless you want a guided tour of a worm's intestinal tract.
Attila?
Briggs spun, leveling a finger at his buddy.
I know you grabbed one of those. Drop it now.
What? The skinny merc tried his best to look sheepish and innocent. I didn't even know what they were. Why would I?
Because they're gizmos and because it's you. Now drop it. I ain't becoming worm poop because of your sticky fingers.
With a huff, Attila let 3 of the little boxes fall to the ground from beneath his poncho. Then at Briggs' continued glare, a 4th. He pulled the fabric back to reveal his emitterless vest. Happy? He grinned when his friend turned to follow the others, and he dropped his poncho back over himself. The giant wrecking ball didn't need to know Veronica still had a 5th behind his back, like he would ever pass up on a perfectly good gizmo. Unable to figure out how exactly he'd landed himself in this mess, Vel fell to the back of the group and groaned, rubbing his temples with the fingertips of each hand. When Evan caught his attention, he nodded for the little merc to join him at the back.
So, what's the plan?
He asked as the tiny dwarf deftly scaled his body to sit on his mechanical shoulder, a well-rehearsed action between the two of them. Evan shrugged himself, adjusting the knives at his belt so as to not stab his traveling buddy. I was kinda hoping you'd come up with something. So far there is no plan. And if I have to hear your idiot brother rattle on about some other ridiculous science-y thing, I'ma put a dagger through his eye. He winced, tapping his friend on the top of his head with apologetic affection. No offense. Vel shifted away from the touch, turning his focus on the group ahead of him.
Then why are you here? You could have vanished before Frankie found you all the first go-around.
Overtime. Vel groaned, long and loud at the smile he could hear in the tiny merc's voice. He knew firsthand how extensive Granny Sadie's contracts could be, with endless clauses and sub-clauses designed to extract every cent possible. Overtime likely meant a whole lot more than just time and a half. Eric, and by extension himself, would be paying off this contract until he died, or longer if the old crone could manage it. Besides, helping an underground kingpin reestablish trade routes has definitely got to come with some perks. Evan kicked his legs with excitement as he too looked ahead.
Granny will be so pleased with me, she'll have to put me on the board at last. Maybe even put my picture in the family newsletter.
At the grumble of disapproval from his friend, he scoffed.
You know I've been waiting nearly 16 years to make my mark.
Yeah?
Vel shifted.
Just wish it didn't have to come at the hands of us all dying.
He looked up.
What does Madam Whisper think we can do against giant worms anyways?
No idea. She didn't seem to like Eric much, though.
Not many people do.
Oi, that's enough from the caboose.
The crocodile spun, shining his torchlight on the back of the group. He let it linger for a long moment before moving to the very front and pulled to a stop, holding his arms out wide.
Righto, mates. We're about to enter what I like to call the buffet zone.
He shone his flashlight over several groups of wide-capped mushrooms that clung to the tunnel walls. A haze of dust motes floated in the beam of light as he swung it around.
Grab yourselves some of these little buttes, but trust me when I say, don't eat them. We're going to be needing them the moment we step through this gate.
He nodded over his shoulder to a hastily boarded-up, rusty door, then clicked off his flashlight, plunging them into near darkness.
The creepy crawlies are sensitive to just about any noise, including the hum of light bulbs. Just don't ask me how I know that.
It took a moment, but a soft kindling of light bloomed around them. Gentle greens and pleasant blues filled the tunnel, all of it illuminating from the groups of mushrooms that surrounded them. Even the motes on the air glowed with faint bioluminescence. Attila bounded forward, his fashionable spurs echoing in the cramped space. He greedily snapped shrooms off the wall at the base of their stems and passed a few of them out to the others. He kept an armload for himself, holding them up close to his eye.
These are awesome! Like little glow sticks. I wonder if we could attach them to Priscilla. That would look so badass.
Fascinated chatter filled the cramped tunnel, but Vel could only bring himself to stare at a swath of blue glowing mushrooms near the entrance. His face, frozen in his usual grimace, lightened when he brushed his mechanical fingers against the cap of the nearest one, and it responded by glowing brighter. He touched another, and his frown split into a grin as even the dust motes in the air shone blue, likely spores of the mushrooms themselves. He chose to leave them, not needing their light in the dark. Vel turned his back on them, his smile fading with the glow, and queried Arthur. His night vision snapped on, and he fell in line.
So, from here on in,
Bruce punctuated the faint chatter, tucking several of the glowing shoots into his jumpsuit.
You're going to have to keep your eyes open, walk soft, and talk none.
He spun on his heel, quietly undoing 3 slide latches, 4 chains, and the heavy 12-inch floor bolting lock. He pushed against the door, the hinges hissing in protest, to reveal a glittering entry just beyond.
I just have one question.
The crocodile pattered through the entryway, stepping out onto a narrow cliff that overlooked a monstrous cavern. Crystals hung from every surface, growing up and down and zigzaggingly. Forests of mushrooms lit up large portions of the dark space, from the swathing carpets of glittering pinpricks of mushroom spore dust to giant, skyscraper-sized fungi monstrosities that glowed bright as neon cities. Rivulets of crystal-clear water snaked through the cavern, carving unmistakable dividers into the ground. Flitting insects that sparked with quick bursts of dim light buzzed above palm-frond trees that grew from spindly stone trunks. Clouds of bats fluttered between large, crystalline stalactites, their sharp echolocations squeaking loudly into the silence. An entire ecosystem thriving underground. Eric leaned over carefully from the ledge, staring down into the deep chasm before them, then gasped as movement caught his eye. A knot of twisting shapes began to unfurl, like the cave floor itself was alive, reacting to such a small sound as the squeaking of bats. Hard, glittering gray shells scraped against one another as these so-called worms rose from their slumber to investigate the disturbance. Their underbellies were a bright acid green, and unlike their small, ground-burrowing invertebrate cousins, these worms had more spindly legs than he could count. 2 long antennae shot up from the top of their heads, presumably how they saw, for their eyes were so small they were nearly non-existent, like most underground creatures. One worm rose to its full height, still frustratingly out of reach of the swarm of bats, and it opened a mouth with 4 large mandibles and let out a horrifying, deep clicking sound that rattled the caverns. Eric stumbled back, his hands searching for the crystal-encrusted wall behind him. The light from the glowing mushrooms dimmed, as if even they were terrified of what lurked in their presence. In the distance, he even watched the palm fronds disappear with comical pops into their stony trunks, like colossal subterranean tube worms. Part of Eric, the one that craved knowledge and had a deep love for science, clawed at him to investigate, to document every new thing in his journal and sketch to his heart's content. But the other part of him, the scared 8-year-old that had never gotten over a prank by his brother that involved several millipedes in his bed, screamed at him to run.
"Those are not worms!"
he whisper-shouted. Bruce barked a silent laugh and nodded.
So, back to my one question.
He fished out an oil-covered rag from an inside pocket of his jumpsuit and began to tie it around his upper jaw, focusing on covering his nostrils. Tossing together a face mask to fit over a snout wasn't fashionable, but at least he could breathe safely through his nose.
I'm just supposed to chuck you lot in there, lock the gate, and report back.
At their terrified expressions, Bruce raised a hand in a placating gesture.
But, would you mind if I joined your little venture instead? I've been down here, alone, so long.
Vel, hardly focusing on anything other than the sheer amount of mushrooms Fruit Punch had been collecting and decorating his poncho with, startled when he realized the others were staring at him. He ripped his attention off the merc, that looked like he'd just left a cottagecore rave, and shrugged his shoulders.
"Yeah, sure. We'll need all the help we can get in dealing with those, worms."
You beaut!
Bruce reached out, pinching the cyborg's cheeks.
But, forget the worms. Trust me. I've watched entire platoons swallowed whole faster than you could say, "Oh my God, that worm ate Freddy!" Nah, if I'm coming with, then we're gonna do a runner instead.
He stepped back, pointing to the farthest side of the cavern at the tiny little sunbeam that filtered down from a gap in the ceiling.
I would have left ages ago, but I can't reach with my stubby arms. I need a boost.
He wiggled his short limbs for emphasis, then let out a small sigh. It had been too long since he'd felt the warmth of the sun on his scales.
Why are you wearing that?
Eric gestured to the grubby red mechanic rag cinched over the reptile's snout.
Thing on your face.
Oh, this?
Bruce smiled, shuffling a little to indicate they'd be following the narrow ledge, then jabbed a thumb at one of the mushrooms attached to the wall and the constant glowing dust that floated around it.
It's to protect against the parasitic zombie spores. Like I said, these little fun guys are anything but.
5 sets of eyes swiveled to Attila, and he could feel every single one of them. And he could see them quite clearly, thank you very much, because the countless mushrooms he'd gathered on his being were like a street lamp illuminating the cramped space between them. He swallowed hard. His hand paused in the motion of sliding yet another glowing bugger into the open gap of his poncho around his neck. His mouth was suddenly dry as 3-month-old jerky.
Parasitic zombie spores?
Thank you for listening to Of Monsters and Mushrooms, the rewrite of Book 1 by Lesley Herron. Join us as we post new chapters roughly every other week. If you would like to listen to the entire book or her other novels in the series, you can do so at talltale.tv.com/series or by using the link in the description.
All right, Eric, time for bed.
But, Dad, Star Trek is on.
It's a rerun. Plus, it's a school night. Now get.
But Commander Riker is in a coma, and he's reliving his past memories to...
Eric?
Fine. Good night.
And if you see your brother, tell him to brush his teeth.
You tell him to brush his teeth. Hey! Oh, were you just in my room? What? No! Yes, you were. Was not. I saw you. Nuh-uh. Dad!
Oh my gosh! What are you two screaming about now?
Vel just stole something from my room. No, I didn't. Yes, you...
Okay. Vel, did you go into your brother's room?
Yeah, but...
You know you're not allowed in there. Did you take anything?
No.
Vel?
I didn't take nothing. I promise.
Okay. Just stay out of his room, okay, buddy?
What?
Okay.
You're just going to believe him?
Eric, it's too late for this. Just go to bed. If anything is missing, I'll make sure Vel replaces it in the morning, okay?
Fine.
Phil gets to go in my room, but I don't get to do anything I want.
Buddy, you gotta stop antagonizing your brother. I know it's easy, but don't do it, all right?
Sorry, Dad.
It's okay. Just go brush your teeth and go to bed.
Okay.
And do more than just wet the toothbrush this time. I'll know if you fake it.
Yes, Dad.
Just another 12 years, then they're both away at college.
Anything I want. If I want to watch Captain Riker,
Yep.
I should be able to watch